We've been hearing about the conflict between the body and the mind, and about the host of suffering that arises on account of their mutual conflict. But the real enemy is identified as the mind. I think we've got the traditional yogic understanding here. It sees things in terms of conquering the body and conquering the mind, which is one way of looking at things. Sometimes I think it can lead to a slightly distorted understanding, but I think here we can put it to good use. And the real culprit is actually the mind, not the body. Because the mind is what creates all our notions, and the body is actually only that, it is a notion. So previously on this page it said the mind gives birth to the body through its own thought force, which sounds wonderfully occult and magical. Thought force creating bodies. But all this really means is that, well, you can take it that way if you want. I'm not going to say what it really means. I don't find it very useful to think in terms of bodies appearing in space created by mind force, although of course there are supposed to be certain magical practices which can do this. But what the mind certainly does is it gives notions, gives rise to notions of the body, gives ideas of body. And even if you don't believe that the mind, or you can't accept that the body is simply a notion, then you can certainly understand how the mind gives rise to notions of body image. The understanding of our own body image is usually quite the opposite to what other people see. So you get thin people who feel fat, and you get fat people who feel they're perfectly all right. Certainly the mind is heavily involved in body image, notions of our body image, for better or worse. And it's something which the whole consumer culture is highly dependent on. It's highly dependent on our body image. If the mind ceases to be, then the body ceases to be too, on account of the cessation of thought force and mental conditioning. But the mind does not cease to be when the body dies. Hence one should strive to kill the mind. So the mind's the culprit. And it's saying here the body ceases to be when there's cessation of thought force and mental conditioning. What this is saying is that if the mental conditioning stops, then the tendencies that lead us to be born again will die away. So we'll attain liberation from the cycle of birth and death. And if you want to believe that, that's fine. But what it, I think, really means, or on a practical level, it means that we can free ourselves from limited notions of body image, or even just limited notions of having a body, or identifying with the body. So that's what we want to stop feeding. So rather than kill it, we can starve it. Mind is like a forest with thought forms for its trees and cravings for its creepers. By destroying these I attain bliss. And as I say, I think the best way to destroy them is just not to feed them. When the mind is dead, whether the body, composed of flesh, blood, etc., exists or not, does not matter to me. That I am not the body is obvious, for the corpse does not function. We have this identification with the body, but it's an insane thing to do, because we're clearly not the body, and we're clearly not the mind either. Where there is self-knowledge, there is neither mind nor the senses, nor the tendencies and habits, the concepts and percepts. I have attained the supreme state. I have emerged victorious. I have attained liberation, nirvana. Mind and the senses and the body are all notions created by the limiting cognitive process, which we sometimes call the mind. we can move beyond all that. We can move beyond all that to acknowledgement of our own awareness, and we can rest in our own awareness. Our own awareness can rest in itself. I have risen above all relationships with the mind, body and the senses, even as the oil pressed out of the seeds has no relation with the seeds. To me now the mind, body and the senses are playthings. You still engage with them. It's like a game. You play the game. You've got to, as long as you're incarnate. You need to engage with others and so on. And when you play a game, you play it seriously. But deep down you know it's still only a game. Purity, total fulfillment of all desires, hence their absence. Friendliness to all, truthfulness, wisdom, tranquility and blissfulness, sweetness of speech, supreme magnanimity, lustrousness, one-pointedness, realization of cosmic unity, fearlessness, absence of divided consciousness, non-perversity. These are my constant companions. It might sound rather callous to describe everything as a game, doesn't it? You know, what about the dreadful suffering and bloodshed that's going on? Is that only a game? Well, our reactions to it are, responses are, the posturing that we take on in response to suffering is a game. Everybody's playing the game. But what we need to do is actually understand it. If we understand it, that we're playing a game, then all the egoistic posturing, which has more effect like adding petrol to the fire rather than putting it out, all that posturing goes, and there is room for all these positive qualities to come up, because there's no more personal investment in it. There's no more personal investment in the situation. So yes, we realise that it's all a game, it's all stories. And when you're involved in a story, in a drama, you take it seriously. But deep down you know it's a drama, you know it's all stories, you know it's all a game. Since at all times everything everywhere happens in every manner, in me there is no desire or aversion towards anything, whether pleasant or unpleasant. Since all delusion has come to an end, since the mind has ceased to be, and all evil thoughts have vanished, I rest peacefully in my own self.